In the deep past, long before telescopes, satellites, or atomic clocks, human beings tilted their heads back at night and found that the heavens were not empty. The firmament was alive with fire, a river of stars flowing across the black, planets wandering with deliberate grace, and the moon changing its face in a pattern both mysterious and dependable. To those who looked upward without knowing what nuclear fusion was, or how gravity binds orbits, the sky seemed to be a place of power beyond mortal reach. It is no exaggeration to say that in the ancient world, the heavens ruled the earth. Every society that has left us a trace of its thoughts, whether on clay tablets carved into stone or preserved in oral myth, connected the lights of the night to divine personalities. The sun was the giver of life, the moon a clock for tides and seasons, the stars a chorus of gods or ancestors. When the sun dipped beneath the horizon and darkness arrived, the stars returned in their ranks, like soldiers stationed eternally in the sky. Some people believed they were gods themselves, others that they were signals from gods, and still others that they were maps of destiny. Whatever the belief, the heavens carried authority. Days turned into nights, months waxed and waned with the moon, seasons rotated with the sun's march across the horizon. A farmer could not plant without knowing when the rains would come, nor harvest without anticipating frost. A sailor could not leave shore without watching which stars rose where. The heavens were calendar, compass, and scripture, all at once. This dependence gave rise to a staggering human endeavor. Across the continents, people began to shape the earth so it would echo the sky. Stones were raised to track the solstices, temples were laid out so that light would pierce their inner sanctuaries on a precise morning. Pyramids were tilted so that the stars of Orion, or the North Star, would align with their sides. What is astonishing is not just that they did this, but that they did so with a precision that humbles even modern engineers. Without lenses, lasers, or computers, they achieved alignments accurate to a fraction of a degree. Why would they go to such effort? At its simplest, the reason was survival. When your food depends on harvest cycles, missing the right planting window could spell famine. But survival alone cannot explain the grandeur of monuments weighing thousands of tons, or the sheer patience needed to haul stones across kilometers of desert. Something deeper was at work. The sky was not merely a practical tool, but the theater of the gods. To anchor a temple to the rising of the sun on the longest day of the year was to declare that the gods themselves entered through its doorway. To align a pyramid with Orion was to connect the tomb of a king with the eternal afterlife in the stars. And here lies the mystery that has haunted archaeologists and astronomers alike. How did ancient people measure angles so small across such vast distances? How did they carry out geodetic surveys without steel or satellites? Some answers have been offered. They could use ropes, sightlines, horizon markers, water levels, and the slow accumulation of knowledge over generations. Still, the exactness remains uncanny. At Giza, the Great Pyramid's sides are aligned almost perfectly north, off by mere minutes of arc, a feat modern builders would hesitate to attempt without advanced equipment. The implication is unsettling. Either our ancestors developed observational skills so sharp that they could match or even surpass us in certain practical tasks, or there were methods now lost to time. Whatever the case, the monuments remain as silent witnesses, pointing not only to the stars, but to the human determination to bind heaven and earth. And so, as we stand at the threshold of this exploration, we begin where the alignment of stone and star takes its most iconic form. Across the sands of Egypt, 3 pyramids rise with uncanny correspondence to 3 stars in the belt of Orion. Whether coincidence, design, or sacred necessity, they remain the most famous riddle written in stone. The night sky of the ancient world was a canvas alive with movement. People who lived without electricity and without distraction from glowing screens saw more than we do today. They spent long hours in darkness beneath a vault of stars, so sharp they seemed within reach, and over the years and decades and centuries, they learned patterns no modern person would notice without instruments. They saw that certain stars always rose before dawn at certain times of year, and that their appearance was tied to events on the ground. The rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the heavens, announced the flooding of the Nile. The return of the Pleiades cluster signaled planting or harvest in other lands. The march of constellations across the sky was nothing less than a script written by the universe to tell people when to act. This is why the heavens were not just decorative or symbolic, but essential. The gods may have been invoked to explain the lights above, but even when clothed in myth, the stars were practical. They marked time more reliably than any human invention could provide in those early centuries. A priest or an astronomer could step outside at night, point to a star rising at the horizon, and announce to the community what stage of the year had arrived. In this sense, the first calendars were not scrolls or stone tablets, but the sky itself, and the first clock was the turning of the earth beneath it. As societies grew more complex, this awareness became institutionalized. Kings relied on their astronomer priests to determine when rituals should be held and when taxes could be collected. Farmers looked to them to declare when it was safe to sow grain. Entire political systems leaned on the accuracy of the watchers of the sky. If they failed, famine or rebellion could follow. The authority of rulers was, in a very real sense, aligned to the heavens. To see the sky as a kingdom of gods was not only religious metaphor, but a recognition that power on earth depended on celestial cycles. It is easy for us today to underestimate the skill this required. Imagine attempting to measure the year without a watch, without a calendar, without even knowing the exact length of the solar cycle. All you have are your eyes, your memory, and the stories passed down from ancestors. Yet by carefully watching where the sun rose along the horizon, by noting which stars appeared just before dawn, by recording the phases of the moon, ancient people came remarkably close to the values we teach in schools today. They did not calculate the year to the decimal point, but they knew it was just over 360 days, and they made corrections with intercalated months or ritual adjustments to keep their festivals in sync with the heavens. Even more remarkable is how they embodied this knowledge in stone. Instead of relying only on memory, they built permanent devices out of their monuments. A row of stones marking where the sun rises on the summer solstice is not just a calendar, but a calendar that renews itself every year without fail. A temple aligned so that sunlight penetrates its inner sanctum only on the equinox is a reminder to generations yet unborn that time itself is inscribed in architecture. The monuments became tools as well as shrines, ways of fixing cosmic knowledge in the landscape. There is an eerie quality to this realization. When we visit ruins today, we may see them as silent relics, but to their builders they were living machines. Each year, the play of light and shadow confirmed that the universe was still in order, that the gods had not abandoned the people, that the harvest would come again. Imagine standing in a crowd as dawn breaks on the longest day of the year and a beam of sunlight strikes directly into the heart of a temple, illuminating a carved idol. For the people gathered there, it was proof of the divine. For us looking back, it is proof of human determination to bind heaven and earth. And yet, the precision nags at us. The Great Pyramid, for instance, is aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal points. Its error is measured in fractions of a degree, so small that modern surveyors are astonished. How was this possible without compasses or satellites? Theories abound. Perhaps they tracked the motion of certain circumpolar stars, drawing perpendicular lines by observing where a star crossed at different times. Perhaps they used simple tools like water-filled trenches to establish true horizontal planes, or ropes stretched taut across long distances. None of these methods are beyond human capability, but achieving such accuracy required generations of patience and obsessive commitment. Here is where the line between practical necessity and spiritual devotion blurs. It is one thing to mark the solstice with a circle of stones, another to haul millions of limestone blocks to raise a monument whose geometry encodes celestial order. The effort seems excessive unless we understand that to the ancients, order in the sky meant order on earth. If the sun rose where it was supposed to, then the kingdom was safe. If the stars stood as they always had, then the gods favored the people. Aligning temples and tombs with celestial bodies was not vanity, but insurance against chaos. Our modern instruments allow us to measure the heavens with greater precision, but they also make us forget the intimacy that once existed between humanity and the stars. For thousands of years, the night sky was not a distant abstraction, but the most immediate and reliable guide to life. It governed food, ritual, politics, and myth. Every civilization that thrived long enough to leave monuments behind left evidence that it too looked upward and sought to fix in stone what it saw. This is why the opening story of ancient alignments must inevitably turn toward Egypt, where stone and star meet in their most iconic form. The pyramids at Giza rise with a geometry that has sparked centuries of debate. Do their three massive forms mirror the three stars in Orion's belt? Was the alignment intentional, or a coincidence magnified by our imagination? These questions remain unsolved, and they invite us deeper into the mystery. For in those structures, we see the beginning of an obsession, a determination to write the heavens on the earth in blocks of stone so vast that they still command awe 5,000 years later. And so we pass from the general to the specific, from the universal recognition of the sky as ruler of earth to the singular puzzle of the Giza Plateau. The transition is natural, for no other site better represents both the survival needs and the cosmic ambition of ancient people. The next step is to confront directly the enigma of the pyramids and the stars they may have been built to mirror. The pyramids are often seen as the ultimate expression of human ambition in stone, but their meaning is inseparable from the sky above them. To stand at Giza as the stars emerge is to feel a connection that transcends centuries. The belt of Orion, with its three brilliant points, climbs above the horizon, and the question arises whether the three pyramids mirror those stars by deliberate intent. To dismiss the idea as coincidence feels unsatisfying when the alignment is so close, yet to claim certainty risks imposing our desires upon the past. The truth lies in the interplay between practical knowledge, religious devotion, and cosmic symbolism. The ancient Egyptians were not blind to the heavens. Their mythology placed Orion, whom they called Sa, in direct connection with Osiris, the god of resurrection and the afterlife. To link the king's resting place with Orion was to anchor his soul in the eternal sky. The texts carved on pyramid walls describe the pharaoh ascending to the stars, joining the imperishable ones that never set, circling forever as guardians of heaven. The architecture was therefore not only stone and geometry, but a ladder of immortality. Aligning pyramids with Orion's belt was more than a matter of stellar mapping. It was a guarantee that the king would become eternal. The precision of this alignment has drawn debate among archaeologists, astronomers, and alternative theorists alike. Mainstream scholars caution against overinterpreting patterns, pointing out that stars shift slowly due to precession of the equinoxes. The Orion correlation theory argues that the pyramids at Giza correspond to Orion's belt as it appeared around 2500 before the Common Era. The relative positions match strikingly well, though not perfectly, leading some to argue that the builders deliberately placed the pyramids to echo the sky. Others argue it could be a chance resemblance, the human mind naturally searching for meaning in patterns. Yet when seen in context with other celestial alignments in temples across Egypt, the possibility of deliberate design cannot be dismissed so easily. For the Egyptians, the sky was not separate from Earth, but woven into it. The Nile flowed north to south, the stars revolved east to west, and the balance of the two was embodied in their architecture. The Great Pyramid is aligned with astonishing accuracy to the cardinal points, suggesting not only practical surveying skill, but a cosmological need to root the king's tomb in universal order. To be aligned with north, south, east, and west was to be aligned with creation itself. The Orion correlation, if accepted, only deepens this cosmic integration. The king lay not only at the heart of Egypt, but at the heart of heaven. This raises a haunting implication. The pyramids may not have been simply tombs, but monumental machines of eternity, their purpose bound to the cycles of stars. If so, they were successful. For thousands of years later, we still remember the names of their builders, and we still look up at Orion and see them reflected. It is as though the pharaohs reached across time to demand our attention, to remind us that they bound themselves to patterns greater than empires. Stone crumbles, dynasties fade, but the stars endure, and in aligning themselves with the heavens, the pharaohs ensured that their memory would too. It is important to remember that Egypt was not alone in this vision. Across the globe, people who never saw the Nile or heard the name of Osiris also raised pyramids and temples that pointed to the sky. From the jungles of Central America to the plains of Mesopotamia, pyramids rose as if the form itself was a natural response to the pull of heaven. Whether by independent invention or a shared human instinct, the pyramid became the bridge between ground and cosmos. This universality hints at something profound. The desire to align with the heavens is not cultural accident, but a fundamental expression of human awareness. The question then becomes why? Why did people devote so much effort to writing the sky upon the earth? Part of the answer lies in the need for order, to make sense of time and secure survival. Part lies in religion, in the belief that gods or ancestors resided in the stars and could be reached through alignment. Yet part also lies in fear. The heavens were not only sources of life, but portents of doom. Eclipses turned day to night without warning. Comets trailed across the sky like swords. Meteors struck the ground with fire. To align with the heavens was not only to seek favor, but to ward off disaster. The monuments were both prayers and shields. This is the terrifying truth at the heart of ancient alignments. They were not simply scientific achievements or artistic flourishes, but acts of existential urgency. To the ancients, the cosmos was not indifferent, but alive, filled with powers that could bless or destroy. The precision of their constructions testifies to the seriousness with which they sought to understand and control these forces. They were building not only calendars and temples, but survival strategies against the vastness above. As the story unfolds beyond Egypt, we will see how this instinct traveled across oceans and continents. In the jungles of the Yucatan, the Maya carved their cosmos into stone with equal precision, casting shadows that revealed the presence of serpents on sacred days. Their pyramids, like those of Egypt, were not just monuments, but instruments tuned to the cycles of sun and planet. By comparing these distant cultures, we begin to glimpse a pattern larger than any one civilization. Thus, the journey continues. From the sands of Giza to the rainforests of Central America, the alignments we uncover are not isolated curiosities, but chapters in a global story. The sky that ruled the earth in Egypt also ruled in the Americas, and the monuments left behind speak the same language of fear, hope, and reverence. The pyramids of Orion lead us westward, across the ocean, to the pyramids of the Maya, where the cosmos itself was carved in stone. When the first glow of dusk fades above the Nile, Orion emerges with startling clarity. His belt of 3 stars, set in a near-perfect line, climbs the sky as it has for thousands of years. To the ancient Egyptians, this constellation was not a hunter as in Greek myth, but the form of Sa, bound to the god Osiris, lord of the dead and the promise of resurrection. The stars of Orion were not cold points of light, but a celestial kingdom, and within their arrangement lay the key to eternity. At Giza, on the western edge of the Nile, 3 vast pyramids rise, each constructed with a magnitude of labor so immense that modern engineers still debate how they were built. The Great Pyramid, raised for Khufu, contains over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing as much as 60 tons. Beside it stand the pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure, smaller but still colossal, aligned together on a diagonal stretching across the plateau. From above, their arrangement seems deliberate, a terrestrial reflection of Orion's belt. 2 are nearly equal in size, echoing Al-Nitak and Al-Nilam, while the smallest pyramid corresponds to Mintaka, slightly offset. This resemblance has been called the Orion correlation, and it remains one of the most enduring enigmas of archaeology. The idea is seductive because it fits so well with Egyptian belief. The pharaoh was not merely buried in stone, but launched into the sky. Texts inscribed within the pyramids describe his soul rising among the imperishable stars, those that never set, circling forever as guardians of heaven. To align a pyramid with Orion was to fix the pharaoh's journey to immortality, to guarantee that his car would ascend to join Osiris. The orientation was therefore more than symbolic. It was a cosmic mechanism, an architecture of resurrection. Skeptics argue that the resemblance between pyramids and stars may be coincidence. After all, human eyes are drawn to patterns, and 3 points in a line can be matched in many ways. But coincidence grows less persuasive when we consider the accuracy of other alignments. The sides of the Great Pyramid are oriented with astonishing precision to true north, south, east, and west. The error is so slight that it measures only minutes of arc, far beyond what we would expect without compasses or satellites. To achieve this, the builders may have watched stars crossing the meridian, drawing perpendicular lines at night to establish exact bearings. Over years of observation, the tiny errors could be averaged away, leaving a precision that still astonishes surveyors today. The debate is complicated by precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis over 26,000 years. The sky the Egyptians saw is not exactly the sky we see today. Around 2,500 years before the Common Era, Orion's belt was tilted at a slightly different angle, and its correspondence with the Giza pyramids was even closer. To those who support the correlation, this is decisive evidence. The builders designed their monuments to echo the heavens as they saw them. To skeptics, it is another reminder of how easily we can impose meaning on chance resemblance. The truth may never be settled, but the resonance between stone and star continues to fuel speculation. The pyramids also point upward in another sense. Their internal shafts, cut through millions of tons of limestone, are angled towards specific stars. The southern shaft of the King's Chamber has been argued to align with Al-Nitak in Orion's belt, while the northern shaft may have pointed toward the star Thuban in Draco, which was near the North Celestial Pole at that time. If these alignments were deliberate, then the pyramid was more than a tomb. It was a cosmic observatory, designed so that the soul of the king could ascend through these channels directly to the stars. This interpretation remains controversial, but the possibility that such precise star shafts were constructed 5,000 years ago is one of the most haunting aspects of the Giza complex. The mystery deepens when we recognize that this was not an isolated act. Across Egypt, temples were oriented to solstices, equinoxes, or heliacal risings of stars. At Abu Simbel, sunlight pierces the sanctuary on only 2 days of the year, illuminating statues of the gods and the pharaoh. At Karnak, massive pylons and corridors frame the rising sun at the solstice. Egypt was a land where stone and star were fused, where architecture itself was an act of astronomy. The pyramids at Giza are only the most visible example of a tradition that stretched across centuries. What does this tell us about the builders? That they were practical farmers measuring the flood of the Nile, but also visionaries seeking eternity in the sky. The pyramids were both calendar and theology, both survival mechanism and cosmic engine. The Orion correlation, whether coincidence or not, captures this dual nature. It is both science and myth, both engineering and faith. To dismiss it entirely as chance is to underestimate the ingenuity of a civilization that watched the heavens with obsessive devotion. For modern eyes, the most unsettling aspect of the pyramids is not how they were built, but why they are so precise. The builders were not guessing. They were aligning with accuracy that requires patient observation over generations. This suggests a continuity of astronomical records, perhaps stretching back further than we imagine. It implies that the Egyptians inherited traditions of skywatching from earlier cultures, and that the knowledge embedded in the pyramids may be the product of thousands of years of careful measurement. Whether by intent or by chance, the pyramids and Orion are now linked in our imagination forever. To look up at the night sky and see those 3 stars is to remember the 3 pyramids. To walk among the pyramids is to see Orion hanging above them. The connection is unbreakable, even if its meaning remains elusive. And so the debate continues, echoing through archaeology, astronomy, and the popular imagination, reminding us that the ancients wrote their cosmos in stone, daring us to decipher it. But the story of pyramids pointing skyward is not confined to Egypt. Across the ocean, in the dense forests of the Yucatan, another people raised their own stepped pyramids, aligning them with celestial cycles in ways equally astonishing. The Maya built with a different style, but with the same determination to tie stone to star, cosmos to earth. Their monuments too became instruments of time, marking solstices, equinoxes, and the cycles of Venus. If Giza speaks of Orion and Osiris, Chichen Itza speaks of serpents and shadows, gods and sacrifice, a parallel vision of the sky carved into stone. The pyramids of Giza do not yield their secrets easily. Scholars have measured every angle, mapped every chamber, and compared every alignment. yet the deeper purpose remains just out of reach. The Orion correlation theory has become one of the most debated ideas in all of archaeoastronomy, not only because of its bold claim, but because it highlights how much we still do not understand about ancient intent. The pyramids are too vast, too deliberate, to be explained away as coincidence. Yet human imagination is also too eager to find meaning where there may be none. The tension between these two possibilities gives the Giza Plateau its enduring mystery. The strongest arguments in favor of the correlation rest on more than shape alone. Proponents note that the alignment of the three pyramids with Orion's belt fits within a larger celestial scheme. The Nile itself, running north to south, may have been seen as a mirror of the Milky Way. If so, then the pyramids are not only stars on the ground but part of a cosmic landscape. The heavens were reflected in the land of Egypt, making the kingdom itself a model of the universe. The pharaoh's tomb was not only his personal pathway to immortality, but also a symbolic union of sky and river, cosmos and earth. Mainstream archaeologists remain cautious. They point out that alignments can be drawn in many ways, and that not every resemblance is intentional. To claim that the pyramids mirror Orion is to risk overlooking other factors such as terrain, construction logistics, and cultural symbolism not tied to stars at all. They remind us that the ancient Egyptians left no explicit record stating that the pyramids were designed to represent Orion's belt. Without such testimony, we walk a line between careful inference and projection. The pyramids are silent, and it is tempting to make them speak words they may never have held. Yet silence does not erase the possibility. The builders of Giza demonstrated astronomical sophistication elsewhere. The temples of Luxor and Karnak are aligned with the rising of the midwinter Sunday. The temple of Hathor at Dendera contains ceilings adorned with zodiacal imagery, clear evidence of celestial mapping. These examples suggest that Egyptian architects were not only aware of the heavens, but deeply invested in aligning structures to them. If temples across the land were oriented to celestial events, then why not the greatest monuments of all? What makes the pyramids so enigmatic is the precision of their construction. The base of the Great Pyramid is nearly level across its entire 13-acre footprint, varying by only a few centimeters. The sides are aligned so closely to the cardinal directions that even modern surveyors marvel at the accomplishment. This level of exactness suggests deliberate intent, the kind of painstaking care that would not stop at simple geometry, but would extend to celestial orientation as well. For people who watch the skies night after night, the alignment of pyramids with stars was not a stretch of imagination, but a natural extension of their worldview. To appreciate their achievement, imagine yourself as an ancient surveyor. You have no magnetic compass, no telescope, no digital instruments. You rely on sight and patience alone. By observing circumpolar stars as they rise and set, you can find true north, then mark it with posts or sighting lines. By measuring where Orion rises at different times of year, you can fix the angle of its belt. Through years of repetition and correction, you gain accuracy that rivals modern methods. It may sound improbable, but the very existence of the pyramids testifies to the patience and discipline of those who built them. The question of why they chose Orion rather than another constellation leads us back to religion. Orion was Osiris, the god who ruled over death and renewal. The pharaoh was not merely a king, but a living Osiris, whose destiny was to ascend to join the god in the afterlife. The pyramid was his vessel, his stairway to the heavens. The correlation between pyramids and Orion is therefore not just geometric but theological. It connects stone to myth, architecture to eternity. Even if the match were less precise, the symbolism would remain powerful. Some researchers extend the theory further, suggesting that the entire Giza complex encodes a cosmic message. They argue that the relative positions of pyramids, causeways, and temples correspond to other constellations, or that the layout forms a celestial map intended to last for millennia. These claims are more speculative and often criticized as modern projections, yet the allure remains strong, for the pyramids themselves seem to demand a cosmic explanation. To raise such colossal monuments for mere burial seems inadequate. To see them as embodiments of the sky feels more fitting to their grandeur. The Orion debate also reflects a deeper divide in how we interpret the past. Are we to see ancient people as practical builders concerned only with earthly needs, or as visionaries reaching toward the stars. The evidence suggests they were both. They needed calendars to track the Nile floods, but they also believed in gods who lived among the constellations. Their monuments are expressions of both survival and transcendence. To dismiss either aspect is to miss the full picture. The longer we contemplate the pyramids, the more they reveal their paradox. They are at once tombs and cosmic engines, practical achievements and mystical symbols, earthly constructions and heavenly reflections. Whether or not the Orion correlation is literally true, the spirit of the theory captures something essential. The pyramids are inseparable from the sky, and the sky is inseparable from human imagination. In their alignment, we see both the rigor of ancient science and the intensity of ancient faith. The debate has not silenced fascination. On clear nights, tourists gather at Giza to watch Orion rise over the pyramids, just as priests and kings may have done 5,000 years ago. The sense of connection is undeniable. Whether coincidence or design, the union of stars and stone speaks across millennia, whispering that humanity has always sought to anchor itself to the cosmos. And as we follow this thread, we find it woven not only in Egypt but across oceans and continents, wherever people dared to bind heaven to earth. The next great expression of this instinct awaits us far from the Nile. In the jungles of the Yucatan, the Maya built temples and pyramids that served as calendars of stone, aligning their stairways and shadows to the cycles of Sun and Venus. If Egypt gave us Orion and Osiris, the Maya gave us Kukulkan, the serpent that slithers down the pyramid on the equinox. The resonance is clear. Humanity, separated by oceans and centuries, was writing the same story in different lands. The pyramids at Giza stand as guardians of an eternal riddle, yet their mystery deepens when we follow the debate beyond the plateau. Scholars and dreamers alike ask whether the builders encoded more than the afterlife of a king. Could the pyramids have been designed as messages for the future, enduring across ages so that later generations might rediscover what the ancients knew? This idea is speculative, but it draws strength from the very survival of the monuments. Thousands of years have eroded palaces, cities, and libraries. Yet the pyramids remain, their geometric purity unshaken, their orientation still true to the stars. The shafts inside the Great Pyramid have fueled further speculation. The alignment of the southern shaft with Al-Nitak in Orion and the northern shaft with Thuban, the pole star of that era, suggest a deliberate stellar design. If this is accepted, then the pyramid becomes not merely a tomb, but a celestial observatory, a permanent fixture through which the king's soul could ascend. To some, the shafts are symbolic stairways to the heavens. To others, they are instruments of cosmic alignment. Either way, their existence shows that the Egyptians were not content to merely echo the sky on the surface of the earth. They carved its pathways into the very heart of their monuments. There is also the question of timing. Around 2,500 years before the Common Era, Orion's belt appeared in the sky at an angle that mirrors the layout of the pyramids more closely than it does today. This coincidence strengthens the case for intentional alignment, for the builders may have been fixing their work to a celestial moment, freezing time in stone. But precession means that the stars slowly drift, and so the alignment becomes less exact with each passing century. If the pyramids were indeed a mirror of Orion, then they preserve a snapshot of the heavens as they once were, an image of the sky that no longer exists. This thought is haunting. The monuments may be both tomb and time capsule, preserving not only the pharaoh's soul, but the heavens themselves as seen by his people. Yet, even as the evidence accumulates, caution remains essential. Without written confirmation, we must resist the temptation to declare certainty. The Egyptians spoke in myth, symbol, and ritual, not in the plain statements modern science demands. Their worldview did not separate astronomy from religion or architecture from theology. For them, to align with Orion was not only a matter of geometry, but an act of devotion, a weaving together of the human and the divine. The pyramids are not simply puzzles to be solved. They are testimonies of belief, reminders of a time when the boundary between earth and sky was thin. What is most unsettling is the scale of devotion implied. To quarry, transport, and set millions of stones with such accuracy required a national effort stretching across decades. This was not merely for the glory of a single king. It was a collective act of faith, a civilization aligning itself with the eternal order of the cosmos. Whether or not the pyramids truly mirror Orion, they embody the principle that human life must be in harmony with the heavens. The terror lies in realizing how seriously the ancients took this, and how much we may have forgotten. The pyramids force us to confront a paradox. On one hand, they prove the ingenuity of human skill, showing that ancient people could achieve precision we often underestimate. On the other hand, they reveal how much of that skill was directed toward purposes we can only partially grasp. They are monuments to both knowledge and mystery, telling us that the ancients saw the sky as ruler of the earth and that their greatest works were built to obey it. And yet, Egypt was not unique. Far across the ocean, beyond deserts and seas the Egyptians never crossed, another civilization built its own pyramids that pointed to the heavens. The Maya of Central America created temples that marked not only the solstices, but the cycles of Venus, weaving their cosmic calendar into the very fabric of their stone. At Chichen Itza, a pyramid known as El Castillo was designed so that on the equinox a serpent of light and shadow slithers down its steps, joining sky and earth in a living display of cosmic order. The echoes are unmistakable. Though oceans separated them, the Egyptians and the Maya spoke the same language of alignment. Thus, the path of our story turns westward, leaving the sands of the Nile for the jungles of the Yucatan. The question grows more pressing. If cultures that never touched could both carve the cosmos into stone with such precision, what does that say about the universality of the human response to the heavens? Did they share knowledge through forgotten contact? Or did they independently arrive at the same conclusion because the sky compels us all in the same way? These are questions that draw us deeper into the mystery, for the terrifying truth may be that the heavens have always ruled, no matter where on earth humanity has stood. In the steaming jungles of the Yucatan, where ceiba trees rise like pillars to the sky and howler monkeys echo their calls across ancient plazas, another people carved their cosmos into stone. The Maya, masters of calendars and keepers of celestial cycles, built cities whose pyramids rose above the canopy like mountains shaped by human hands. To walk among the ruins today is to feel the same eerie sensation one feels at Giza. The stones are silent, but their silence is charged with intent. Every stairway, every plaza, every temple was placed not at random but according to the dictates of the heavens. The most famous of these monuments is El Castillo, the Pyramid of Kukulkan, at Chichen Itza. From a distance, it appears as a great four-sided stairway ascending to a temple at the top, but its deeper meaning reveals itself only on 2 days each year. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, as the sun sets, light and shadow play across the pyramid's northern staircase. 7 triangles of shadow align with the balustrade, creating the illusion of a serpent undulating downward, its head carved in stone at the base. For the watching crowd, the god Kukulkan descends from the sky, embodying the cycle of death and renewal, of planting and harvest, of divine presence on earth. This spectacle was not accidental. The pyramid was carefully designed so that the equinox would summon the serpent in shadow. To achieve this, the architects had to know the precise path of the sun, calculating not only its yearly cycle, but the angle of descent at that latitude. This was archaeoastronomy embedded in architecture, a cosmic calendar that renewed itself twice each year without fail. The people gathered to witness it did not merely see a trick of light. They saw the arrival of a god, the confirmation that the universe still moved in harmony, that their rituals and sacrifices were accepted by forces greater than themselves. The pyramid itself is a calendar in stone. It has 91 steps on each of its 4 sides, adding up with the platform at the top to 365, the number of days in a solar year. Each side is oriented to the cardinal directions, anchoring the temple to the order of the cosmos. In its design, the Maya wove together astronomy, religion, and governance. The pyramid was not only a temple, but a cosmic machine, ensuring that the rhythm of the heavens remained aligned with the rhythm of human life. The serpent of light and shadow remains one of the most striking examples of ancient astronomical architecture, but it was not unique. Across the Maya world, temples and pyramids were aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and planetary cycles. Observatories like El Caracol at Chichen Itza feature windows and sightlines that track the rising of Venus. This was no accident, for Venus held immense importance in Maya cosmology. It was associated with the feathered serpent god, with war, sacrifice, and renewal. The cycles of Venus were tracked with such precision that the Maya calculated its synodic period to within seconds of the true value. When Venus rose as morning star, wars were declared, sacrifices performed, kingdoms shaken. The planet was not a distant rock orbiting the sun, but a divine actor in human affairs. The Maya calendar system was equally staggering. They maintained not one but several interlocking calendars. The Hab, a solar calendar of 365 days, was combined with the Tzolk'in, a ritual calendar of 260 days. Together, they created the calendar round, a cycle of 52 years, after which time was believed to reset. Beyond this, they tracked the long count, measuring vast spans of history across thousands of years. Their inscriptions record dates stretching back to what they considered the beginning of creation, an origin more than 5,000 years before our era. For the Maya, time itself was sacred, and to keep it required aligning human life with the cycles of sun, moon, and planets. At the heart of this cosmic order lay sacrifice. The rituals performed at Chichen Itza were not gentle prayers but acts of blood, sometimes of human life. To feed the gods was to ensure the continuation of the cosmos, to keep the sun rising and the rains falling. The serpent descending on the equinox was not merely a sign of renewal but also a demand. The god arrived, and offerings were required. In this way, the alignments of pyramids were both awe-inspiring and terrifying. There were calendars that demanded flesh, architecture that spoke with divine authority. The Maya were not alone in their devotion to the heavens. Other Mesoamerican cultures, such as the Aztec, also tracked Venus and feared its rising. But the Maya carried this obsession further, building cities that were essentially cosmic diagrams. Their plazas aligned with solstices, their ball courts symbolized the struggle of sun and moon, their temples rose as mountains joining earth to sky. To live in a Maya city was to live inside a model of the universe, where every ritual was timed to celestial events, and every sacrifice was a negotiation with cosmic order. What is most striking for us today is how the Maya, isolated from Egypt and Mesopotamia, arrived at the same conclusion. The heavens rule the earth. To survive, humanity must align itself with the cosmos. The Maya saw the same truth the Egyptians saw, and they too wrote it in stone. The serpent of Chichen Itza slithers in light just as surely as Orion shines above Giza. Oceans and centuries could not erase the shared human instinct to bind heaven and earth in monuments that defy time. From the perspective of modern astronomy, we can admire their precision, but from the perspective of human history, we must also recognize the fear behind it. To the Maya, a miscalculation in the calendar could mean drought, famine, or defeat in war. To align with Venus was not optional, but essential. The terrifying truth was that the cosmos was alive, unpredictable, and potentially hostile. The pyramids of the Maya, like those of Egypt, were acts of survival as much as devotion, calendars of blood as much as stone. The journey of alignments now carries us across the ocean once more, to a land where stone circles rose long before pyramids, where megaliths were set in patterns that tracked both sun and moon. At Stonehenge, in the windswept plains of southern Britain, another chapter of this cosmic story unfolds. There, circles of stone became clocks of the gods, predicting eclipses and marking solstices with a precision that still astonishes. The language of alignment was global, and Stonehenge speaks it as clearly as Giza or Chichen Itza. The Maya world was built on a foundation of cycles. To them, time was not a straight line but a wheel that turned endlessly, repeating patterns of creation and destruction. Their inscriptions, carved into stelae and temple walls, speak of days counted with a precision that defies belief. They recorded eclipses, predicted the risings of Venus, and measured the movements of the moon with an accuracy that rivals modern astronomical tables. Their priests, who were also astronomers, held the fate of kingdoms in their calculations. If they announced that Venus was about to rise as morning star, armies marched to war. If they declared that an eclipse was approaching, rulers performed rituals to shield their people from cosmic danger. The cycles of Venus were particularly potent. The planet disappears from the evening sky, then reappears as morning star after a span of 8 days. It then shines for 263 days before vanishing into the sun's glare, only to return after 50 days to rise again in the evening. The Maya tracked this synodic cycle with extraordinary care, recording it as 583.92 days, a value within seconds of the true figure measured with telescopes. For a civilization without telescopes, this achievement is staggering. It required centuries of watching, recording, and correcting, passing knowledge from generation to generation until the pattern was clear. But for the Maya, this was not abstract science. Venus was a god, and its cycle was a script for human action. Its rise as morning star was considered dangerous, a time when kings could be overthrown and wars could be won or lost. Sacrifices were offered to appease the god, sometimes of captives, sometimes of nobles, sometimes even of kings themselves. The sky was not passive. It was an actor in human history, and to ignore its signals was to invite disaster. The terrifying truth for the Maya was that they lived under constant negotiation with the cosmos. Their calendars reflect this same urgency. The Harb of 365 days kept track of the solar year, while the Tzolk'in of 260 days structured ritual life. When combined, they produced the calendar round of 52 years. This cycle was treated with dread, for at its completion the world was thought to be in danger of ending. On the final night of the 52nd year, fires were extinguished, rituals were performed, and people waited in darkness to see if the sun would rise again. When it did, fires were rekindled, and the cycle began anew. In this ceremony, we see not only devotion but fear, the fear that the cosmos might at any moment decide to erase human existence. The long count pushed the horizon of time even further. It was capable of measuring spans of thousands of years, linking present rituals to mythic events in the deep past. The famous date of 13 Baktun, which corresponded to December 21st, 2012 in our calendar, marked the completion of one such cycle. Though modern imagination turned this into a prophecy of apocalypse, for the Maya it was not the end of the world but the turning of a great wheel. Yet the very scale of the cycle reveals their worldview. They did not see human history as isolated, but as embedded in cosmic rhythms that dwarfed human lifespans. To them, civilization itself rose and fell in harmony with celestial cycles. Their architecture mirrored these beliefs. At Uxmal, the Pyramid of the Magician was built so that its stairways align with the sun on specific days. At Copan, stelae record astronomical events with precision. At Tikal, pyramids tower above the jungle, aligned to solar positions that mark the passage of seasons. These were not random constructions. They were instruments of time, built to guarantee that rituals remained in sync with the sky. The city itself was a cosmic diagram, a map of heaven laid upon the earth. The rituals carried out within these cities reinforced the cosmic order, but also revealed the darker side of alignment. Human sacrifice was not a peripheral act, but a central duty. To feed the gods with blood was to ensure the continuation of the cycles. At Chichen Itzá, captives were thrown into the sacred cenote, their bodies left to sink into the dark water as offerings. Inscriptions and bones alike testify that life was traded for cosmic balance. The serpent of Kukulkan that descended on the equinox demanded payment, and the Maya gave it willingly. The architecture of light and shadow was therefore not only awe-inspiring but terrifying, for it reminded everyone that the universe demanded sacrifice. The scale of this devotion raises unsettling questions. How could a people devote such immense energy to tracking cycles that stretch across centuries? How could they bind themselves so completely to a cosmos that seemed both orderly and cruel? The answer lies in the fragility of life in the tropics. Droughts struck, harvests failed, wars erupted. To survive, the Maya turned to the heavens, seeking patterns that could bring predictability to a chaotic world. Their calendars were shields against disaster, their temples bargaining tables with the gods. In this sense, the Maya cosmos was both scientific and existential. It was their way of imposing order on a world that threatened constantly to collapse. And yet, for all their brilliance, the Maya civilization itself collapsed. Cities were abandoned, monuments left to the jungle, calendars silenced. Some scholars argue that drought played a role, others that political turmoil or warfare contributed. Whatever the cause, the decline of the Maya is a stark reminder that alignment with the heavens did not guarantee survival. The very people who tracked Venus with unmatched precision and built pyramids that summoned gods in shadow could not prevent the disintegration of their own society. This is perhaps the most haunting lesson of all. The Maya teach us that aligning with the heavens is not only about knowledge but about humility. They saw themselves as part of a cosmic system far larger than human ambition, and they carved that recognition into stone. But when the cycles turned against them, no amount of sacrifice could hold back collapse. The terrifying truth is that even the most devoted skywatchers cannot escape the power of the cosmos. From the jungles of the Yucatan, our journey now turns toward Europe, where a ring of stones stands against the wind on the Salisbury Plain. Long before the pyramids of Egypt or the temples of the Maya, people there raised massive megaliths that framed the rising and setting Sunday. At Stonehenge, as at Giza, and Chichen Itza, architecture became astronomy, and the heavens ruled the earth once more. In the plazas of the Maya, the heavens did not merely provide guidance, they gave meaning to every act of life and death. The serpent descending on the pyramid steps was only the most visible reminder of a world in which human beings lived at the mercy of cosmic rhythms. Priests calculated eclipses and announced them as omens, sometimes predicting them centuries in advance. When the moon darkened or the sun was swallowed, the entire city gathered in fear, drums beating, incense rising, blood spilled to persuade the gods to restore the light. To the Maya, the sky was not distant but immediate, and its changes were signs of favor or wrath. The inscriptions that survive speak with a voice that is both scientific and terrifying. They record the exact length of cycles, yet they also describe these cycles as gods, beings with desires and tempers. Numbers were not abstract to them but sacred entities. To write that Venus would rise after 584 days was to invoke the god himself, to call upon his presence. This merging of calculation and myth is perhaps the greatest difference between ancient and modern astronomy. Where we see mechanics, they saw will. Where we see orbits, they saw narratives of conflict and renewal, and yet the measurements match. The terror comes from realizing that behind their gods lay truths as precise as ours. The architecture of the Maya reinforced this fusion of faith and science. Each city was a cosmic theater where celestial events unfolded before crowds of believers. The equinox serpent at Chichen Itza, the alignments of temples at Uxmal, the solar positions encoded in Tikal's towering pyramids, these were not curiosities but central to civic life. Imagine thousands gathered in the plaza, waiting for the moment when shadow meets stone and the serpent descends. The gasp that would have swept the crowd was not only awe but relief, a confirmation that the world was still in order. At that moment, rulers and priests claimed legitimacy, for they alone had aligned their city with the universe. Power on earth was proven by proof in the sky. The sacrifices that followed were therefore not senseless brutality, but offerings demanded by the cosmic system. Blood was fuel for the cycles, a necessary gift to ensure that the sun would rise, the rains would fall, and Venus would continue its appointed course. It is a chilling thought, but to the Maya, sacrifice was the most rational response to a universe that constantly demanded balance. To refuse would be to risk famine, drought, or annihilation. The pyramids themselves were contracts in stone, reminding the people that the gods must always be paid. When we stand at these ruins today, swallowed by jungle and silence, we are struck by two conflicting emotions. On one hand, admiration for the brilliance of a people who tracked celestial cycles with such accuracy. On the other, dread at the cost of this knowledge, at the blood spilled to keep the cycles turning. The Maya cosmos was both inspiring and horrifying, a mirror of human ingenuity and human fear. In their collapse lies a warning. Despite their astronomical mastery, their civilization could not withstand the pressures of drought, warfare, and political unrest. Their alignment with the heavens gave them insight but not immunity. Cities were abandoned, monuments left to decay, the jungle reclaiming plazas where once thousands gathered to watch the serpent of light. The cycles they worshipped continued without them, indifferent to their devotion. The sun rose, Venus shone, the rain fell or failed, and the people who had bound themselves so tightly to the heavens vanished into history. The Maya remind us of a truth as old as humanity itself. To understand the sky is to glimpse the rhythms that govern life, but to imagine that understanding guarantees control is illusion. The cosmos is too vast, its cycles too immense, for any civilization to master. The terror lies in realizing that while we may read the heavens, we cannot command them. Their monuments endure, but their cities fell, and in that contradiction we see both the brilliance and the fragility of human effort. As we leave the jungles of the Yucatan, we carry with us the image of the serpent descending in light and shadow, a god written in the geometry of the Sunday. Our path now turns to another landscape, one colder and windswept, where grass plains stretch to the horizon and stones rise in circles against the sky. Long before the Maya, long before Egypt, people gathered on the Salisbury Plain to raise megaliths whose purpose has puzzled generations. There, at Stonehenge, another chapter of the human dialogue with the heavens begins. On the windswept plains of southern Britain, where the horizon stretches unbroken beneath shifting clouds, a circle of stones rises against the sky. Stonehenge, weathered by millennia of rain and frost, remains one of the most enigmatic monuments ever built. Its massive trilithons stand like gateways to another world, their lintels balanced on uprights with improbable precision. To walk among them is to feel the weight of an ancient purpose, one that reached beyond the practical needs of farming and shelter into the domain of the heavens. The stones were raised in stages across many centuries, beginning around 5,000 years ago. Some were hauled from quarries more than 200 kilometers away, dragged over hills and rivers without wheels or beasts of burden. Others were taken from local sites, shaped and erected with care. The circle that stands today is only part of what once existed, yet even in ruin, it commands awe. Its alignment with the solstices has long been recognized, and it is this alignment that reveals the monument's true nature. Stonehenge was not simply a burial ground or a gathering place. It was a machine of time, a clock of the gods. At dawn on the summer solstice, the sun rises precisely above the heel stone, casting its light along the axis of the monument into the circle. Thousands still gather to witness this moment each year, just as people did in the deep past. For the builders, it was proof that the cosmos remained in order, that the longest day had returned, that life would continue. The alignment is too precise to be coincidence. Stonehenge was designed to capture this moment, to embody in stone the turning point of the solar year. The winter solstice was equally important. On that shortest day, the sun set in alignment with the axis of the monument, a reassurance that even in the darkest season the light would return. To a people living in a climate where survival depended on the timing of crops and the predictability of seasons, this was no mere ritual. It was a matter of life and death. Stonehenge was a calendar that renewed itself each year, reminding the people that they were part of a greater cycle. But the monument's purpose may have gone further. Some researchers argue that Stonehenge was also a lunar observatory capable of predicting eclipses. The positions of certain stones and pits suggest alignments with the complex cycle of the moon's rising and setting. By tracking this cycle, which spans over 18 years, the builders may have been able to foresee when the sun and moon would align to darken the sky. To predict an eclipse in a world without telescopes would have been an act of awe-inspiring power. Those who could do it would have been seen as possessing knowledge from the gods themselves. The question of how such precision was achieved remains unsolved. Without written records, we can only reconstruct methods from the stones themselves. Perhaps wooden posts and sightlines were used before the stones were raised, marking the rising and setting points of sun and moon across the horizon. Perhaps years of careful observation accumulated into a system of prediction. Whatever the means, the result was a monument that encodes cycles far larger than a human lifespan. Stonehenge was not built for one generation, but for all generations, a permanent structure that outlived its builders and spoke to those who came after. The eerie power of the place comes not only from its scale but from its silence. No texts explain its function, no myths survive from the people who built it. We are left with the stones themselves, mute but deliberate, their alignments whispering of a knowledge both practical and sacred. To stand within the circle as the solstice sun rises is to feel the presence of those long gone, to sense the continuity of human awe before the heavens. The builders may not have spoken our language, but their monument speaks directly to us. The idea that Stonehenge was both temple and calendar captures its dual role in human life. It was a place of gathering, ritual, and burial, but it was also a machine for measuring time. In this fusion of faith and science, we see the same pattern that appears at Giza and Chichen Itza. Across continents and millennia, human beings sought to fix the heavens in stone, to make the cycles of sun and moon tangible, reliable, eternal. Stonehenge is Europe's answer to the pyramids, a circle of megaliths that embodies the terrifying truth that survival itself depends on alignment with the cosmos. Yet the monument also carries an ominous weight. If it tracked eclipses, as some argue, then it was not only a calendar of hope, but a warning system of doom. To predict the darkening of the sun or the blood-red shadow of the moon was to confront the fear that the heavens could turn against humanity. The stones may have stood as both reassurance and threat, reminders that the cosmos was orderly but also dangerous. In this tension lies the mystery of Stonehenge. It was at once a celebration of life and a monument to dread. As we leave the circle of stones behind, we recognize a pattern that repeats across the ancient world. Whether in Egypt, the Yucatan, or Britain, people raised monuments that were more than structures. They were instruments of time, bridges between earth and sky, expressions of both devotion and fear. But there is a darker side yet to explore, for the heavens did not always bring life. They also brought terror. Comets, eclipses, and supernovae appeared without warning, and ancient cultures saw them as omens of destruction. To understand the full meaning of alignment, we must turn to the sky as an omen, a place where cosmic order and cosmic disaster intertwine. The mystery of Stonehenge deepens the longer one studies its design. The great sarsens forming the inner horseshoe, the linteled circle, the smaller blue stones placed with care, all reveal a plan too deliberate to be merely symbolic. While the summer solstice sunrise alignment is most famous, the site encodes far more than a single event. Archaeologists and astronomers have long debated whether its stones and pits were used to track the complex dance of the moon. Unlike the sun, which repeats its rising and setting points each year, the moon follows an 18.6-year cycle known as the lunar standstill. During this period, the moon's rising and setting points swing to their furthest extremes on the horizon, then back again. To track this cycle requires patience beyond the span of a single human life. Yet there are hints that Stonehenge was built with this very cycle in mind. Some of its alignments match positions of the moon at these rare standstill extremes, suggesting the builders sought to capture not just the year, but nearly 2 decades of lunar motion in stone. If this is true, the implications are profound. It would mean that the people of Neolithic Britain possessed not only the observational skill, but the cultural memory to pass data across generations, ensuring that alignments could be fixed with long-term accuracy. It would also mean that Stonehenge was a predictive tool. By understanding the lunar standstill cycle, its builders may have been able to forecast eclipses. Eclipses occur only when the sun, moon, and earth align at the nodes of the lunar orbit. To know when these alignments might happen requires knowledge of the moon's long cycle. If Stonehenge encoded this cycle, then it was not just a monument but a machine capable of predicting moments when day could turn to night, or the moon could vanish in blood-red shadow. For those who lived in a world ruled by the sky, this power would have been terrifying and sacred. Imagine the impact of predicting an eclipse centuries before modern science. To the people gathered on the plain, such foresight would have seemed divine. Those who commanded it would have wielded immense authority. The stones themselves may have been understood as the bones of the gods, their alignments proof that human life was woven into cosmic order. Ritual must have filled the circle. Excavations reveal cremated remains, evidence that Stonehenge served as a burial ground as well as an observatory. The dead were placed within a monument aligned to cycles of the sun and moon, their souls bound to the eternal rhythm of the cosmos. Festivals would have gathered the living there, drums beating, fires blazing, people waiting through the night for the rising sun or the arc of the moon. When the moment arrived and the heavens aligned with the stones, the effect would have been overwhelming. It was not mere spectacle but proof that their world was in balance. The dual nature of Stonehenge is striking. It was both practical and spiritual, both calendar and temple, both burial ground and cosmic machine. In this duality we see again the pattern repeated across civilizations. The heavens were rulers, and monuments were the contracts that bound humanity to them. The people of Britain, far removed from the Nile and the Yucatan, came to the same conclusion. To survive and to understand, one must align with the sky. As the solstice sun pierces the circle, as the moon drifts across the horizon at its extremes, we are reminded that Stonehenge was not a ruin to its builders. It was alive, an instrument tuned to the universe. Its stones still stand, though its people are long gone, and they still perform their function, silently marking the cycles that once ruled life and death. But these alignments were never free of dread. To track the heavens so closely was also to confront their darker side. The same sun that nourished crops could vanish in an eclipse. The same moon that guided tides could disappear into shadow. Comets could blaze across the sky like swords. Supernovae could outshine planets, and each event was read as omen. Stonehenge, like other monuments, was a reminder that while the heavens could bring life, they could also announce doom. From this realization, we move naturally into the next chapter. The sky was not only a clock of order, but a book of omens. Ancient cultures feared its warnings as much as they revered its cycles. To understand why alignments mattered, we must see how the heavens were also signs of destruction, and so we turn to the terrors of eclipses, comets, and cosmic fire, to the sky as an omen of doom. The circle of Stonehenge has always been a place of paradox. It speaks of order, yet it hints at dread. It celebrates the return of the sun, yet it whispers of nights when the sun itself might fail. The people who raised its stones lived close to the edge of survival, and for them the sky was never benign. To watch the heavens was to watch for signs of favor and warning alike. The solstice sunrise could bring reassurance, but an eclipse could bring terror. Both were bound into the same cosmic cycle, and both were written into stone. Imagine the scene thousands of years ago. Families and clans gather on the Salisbury Plain, the smoke of fires curling into the air, the rhythmic beat of drums echoing across the grasslands. They wait through the long night, shivering in the chill, until the horizon begins to glow. Then, precisely as expected, the sun breaks through above the heel stone, casting its light into the circle. A roar rises from the crowd, relief and awe mingling, for once again the world is in balance. At that moment, the people are bound together by faith in the stones, by trust in the cycle, by the sense that the cosmos has confirmed their place within it. But now imagine another scene, one not bound to the calendar but to sudden cosmic chance. The sun climbs into the sky, strong and steady, until at midday it begins to darken. Shadows lengthen, birds fall silent, and the world plunges into an impossible twilight. To a people without modern science, this is not mechanics but catastrophe. The gods have turned away, the sky itself has been wounded. Fear spreads, sacrifices are made, desperate prayers offered. If the priests had predicted it, their power grew immeasurable. If they had not, their failure could bring ruin. The difference between survival and collapse lay in whether the cycle had been understood. This is why Stonehenge may have been more than a solar calendar. Its possible encoding of lunar standstills and eclipse prediction points to a deeper motive. The builders were not simply marking time, they were seeking control over the uncontrollable, knowledge of the unknowable. They wanted to see the disaster before it came, to prepare rituals in advance, to turn terror into order. The stones stood as sentinels not only of life's return, but of death's approach. Even today, standing within the circle at dawn or dusk, one feels the weight of this dual purpose. The stones are too massive, their arrangement too deliberate, to be mere markers of the year. They are thresholds, gateways to a realm where human fear and cosmic rhythm merge. They remind us that alignment with the heavens was never a matter of curiosity alone. It was a defense against chaos. It was a negotiation with forces too vast for human control. Stonehenge belongs to a lineage of monuments built across the ancient world to fix the sky in stone. From the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of the Maya, from the stone circles of Britain to the petroglyphs of the American Southwest, humanity has again and again raised markers of alignment. The details differ, but the impulse is the same. The heavens ruled, and survival depended on obedience to their patterns. And yet, even obedience could not erase fear. Every culture remembered times when the sky seemed to turn hostile, when darkness fell at noon, when comets flared like omens of war, when new stars appeared and then faded. These events were terrifying because they broke the rhythm. They were reminders that the cosmos could not always be predicted, that beyond the cycles lay chaos. Monuments like Stonehenge were built to confront this truth, to make the unpredictable seem less arbitrary, to give shape to the terror of the sky. Thus, the story of Stonehenge leads us to a broader realization. Alignments were never neutral. They were always charged with meaning, always tied to survival, always shadowed by fear. To watch the solstice sunrise in the circle was to celebrate life. To watch an eclipse was to confront death. Both were contained in the same sky, and both ruled the same earth. As we leave the stones of Salisbury Plain, we turn toward this darker dimension of ancient astronomy. The next chapter explores how cultures across the world saw the sky not only as a source of order, but as a source of omens. Eclipses, comets, supernovae, all were feared as signs of doom. Alignments were not only calendars of life, but also shields against catastrophe. To understand the terrifying truth of ancient sky watching, we must now step into the realm of omens, where the heavens spoke of destruction as clearly as they spoke of renewal. For all the beauty and order the heavens offered, they also carried terror. The same cycles that promised harvest and renewal could, without warning, twist into signs of doom. Ancient people knew this in their bones. They looked upward not only to mark time, but to watch for catastrophe. An eclipse, a comet, a sudden star blazing into existence, these were not curiosities but omens, messages from powers beyond comprehension. The sky was both calendar and prophecy often meant disaster. Among the most feared events were eclipses. To us, they are predictable, a matter of orbital mechanics, but to early cultures they were terrifying ruptures of order. Imagine standing in a field as day turns to night in a matter of minutes. The air chilling, animals panicking, the sun swallowed by an invisible mouth. For the Maya, such events demanded sacrifice. Priests bled themselves, kings cut their flesh, captives were slain to persuade the gods to release the light. In Mesopotamia, eclipses were considered death sentences for kings. Rituals were enacted to protect rulers, sometimes by placing a substitute king on the throne for the duration of the danger, then killing him once the sky returned to normal. The eclipse was not only a celestial event, it was a political crisis. The terror was compounded by unpredictability. Without long-term records or mathematical models, most eclipses struck without warning. They seemed random, cosmic ambushes proving that the universe could not be trusted. Only cultures that tracked the sky for generations began to notice patterns. The Babylonians, with their meticulous records, discovered the Saros cycle of about 18 years, allowing them to forecast eclipses with surprising accuracy. But even this knowledge was clothed in dread. The ability to predict an eclipse was power, but it was power rooted in fear, for what was being predicted was the potential collapse of cosmic order. Comets were another source of terror. Long-tailed and unannounced, they blazed across the heavens like swords. In China, scribes recorded them as broom stars sweeping away dynasties. In Europe, they were seen as omens of plague and war. When Halley's Comet appeared in 1066, its streaking presence was embroidered into the Bayeux tapestry alongside the conquest of England. For the people who saw it, the comet was no neutral wanderer of ice and dust. It was a divine proclamation that empires would fall and blood would be spilled. The sheer unpredictability of comets gave them a special power. They could not be fitted into the neat cycles of calendars. They were chaos embodied in light. Even more unsettling were supernovae, though few civilizations left clear records of them. In 1054, a star exploded in the constellation Taurus, creating the Crab Nebula we see today. Chinese astronomers described a guest star so bright it was visible in daylight for weeks. Imagine the shock of seeing a new sun ignite in the night, with no warning, no precedent. To the people of the Song dynasty, it was an omen of vast significance, though the records preserve only the observation, not the interpretation. Elsewhere, petroglyphs may record the same event, but the meaning has been lost. We can only imagine the fear it must have sparked. Myths from across the world preserve the memory of cosmic disaster. The Norse spoke of wolves devouring the sun and moon at the end of days. The Maya feared cycles of creation ending in fire and flood. In ancient China, dragons were said to devour the sun during eclipses, requiring loud noises and drums to scare them away. These stories are not mere fantasy. They are cultural armor against events that defied explanation, rituals to impose meaning on chaos. By imagining that a dragon swallowed the sun, one could imagine that humans had the power to frighten it off. The terror of the unknown was thus given a narrative that made survival bearable. We must not mistake these fears as primitive superstition. They were rational responses to phenomena that could destroy crops, destabilize societies, and undermine rulers. A solar eclipse at the wrong moment could trigger rebellion. A comet could coincide with famine. A supernova could unsettle the faith of a kingdom. To ignore the heavens was to risk disaster. To watch them obsessively was to prepare. Monuments aligned with solstices and equinoxes were not only calendars of life, but also early warning systems against cosmic upheaval. What is most chilling is how often these fears proved justified. Climatic shifts did occur. Droughts struck. Harvests failed. Volcanoes erupted, sending dust into the sky that dimmed the sunday. To those without modern science, the line between natural disaster and celestial omen was thin. When crops withered after a strange appearance in the sky, it was natural to link the two. When kingdoms fell after comets blazed, the connection seemed undeniable. The heavens were not only rulers but executioners. Stonehenge, Giza, Chichen Itza all may have served in part to prepare for these terrors. Alignments gave a sense of control, a feeling that the unpredictable could be tamed. By knowing when the sun would stand still, when the moon would shift, when Venus would rise, people believed they could hold back chaos. Yet the very existence of these monuments proves how deeply they feared disorder. The sky was never entirely safe. It could bless, but it could also destroy. As we follow this thread, our story now turns toward the Americas once more, where another ancient people carved their knowledge into rock. In the deserts and canyons of the Southwest, the ancestral Puebloans created alignments that tracked not only solstices but the great cycle of the moon, carving warning signs into stone that may have been tied to drought and collapse. Their legacy, like that of the Maya and Egyptians, is both awe-inspiring and haunting. It tells us that the fear of the heavens was not confined to one place, but spread across continents, shaping civilizations in ways we are only beginning to understand. The fear of the sky was carved as deeply into myth as it was into stone. Across the world, stories of cosmic disorder were told to explain the sudden terror of eclipses, comets, and fiery portents. These myths, though clothed in the language of gods and monsters, reveal a consistent truth. The heavens were not entirely reliable. They could break their own rhythm, and when they did, humanity trembled. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of kingship and writing, omens were catalogued with obsessive care. Clay tablets record lists of celestial events paired with predictions of earthly consequences. If Venus rose in a certain part of the sky, famine would follow. If the moon was swallowed in shadow, a king would die. This was not idle superstition, but a system of survival, a way to impose order on chaos. The priests who interpreted the heavens were not storytellers alone, but advisors to rulers. Their words could decide whether armies marched or treaties were signed. To watch the sky was to watch the fate of nations unfold. In Mesoamerica, the Maya wove their own cycles of catastrophe into their calendars. Each great cycle of time, they believed, ended in destruction and was followed by a new creation. One age had ended in flood, another in fire, another in monstrous beasts. These stories were not meant as distant myths, but as warnings. The world itself was fragile, and when the cycles turned, humanity could be swept away. Every eclipse, every comet, every rare conjunction of planets was a reminder that the gods might decide to end the current age. The people responded with ritual, sacrifice, and careful observation, hoping to delay the inevitable. In the traditions of Northern Europe, Ragnarok loomed as the final catastrophe. Wolves would devour the sun and moon, plunging the world into darkness before fire consumed everything. This myth, terrifying in its imagery, is not unlike the stories of dragons swallowing the sun in China or jaguars eating it in the Andes. The imagery differs, but the fear is the same. The light that sustains life could be taken away at any moment, and when it was, the end would come. Even in cultures that prized reason, fear of the sky lingered. Ancient Greek philosophers debated the causes of eclipses and comets, but popular imagination still treated them as omens. The historian Pliny wrote of comets as signs of disaster. Julius Caesar himself was said to have been foreshadowed by a comet that appeared after his assassination. The most powerful empire of its age still trembled at lights in the heavens. Knowledge did not erase dread. The unsettling truth is that the fear was not unfounded. Environmental records show that great disasters often coincided with strange appearances in the sky. Volcanic eruptions sent ash into the stratosphere, dimming the sun and cooling the earth. The eruption of Thera in the Aegean may have inspired myths of darkness and flood. The fall of empires often coincided with droughts that could be linked to shifts in climate, which in turn were tied to solar cycles. To see the sun dim or the moon vanish was to witness the edge of survival. The connection between sky and catastrophe was real, even if the causes were misunderstood. This is why alignments mattered so much. They gave people the sense that the universe could be understood, that omens could be read and disasters averted. A circle of stones predicting the solstice, a temple aligned with Venus, a pyramid designed to channel starlight, all these were shields against fear. They told the people that the priests were watching, that the gods were appeased, that chaos was at least temporarily held at bay. The monuments were both calendars and talismans, reminders that humanity was not helpless before the heavens. But even the most careful alignments could not prevent catastrophe. When the cycles turned against them, civilizations faltered. The fall of the Maya, the collapse of the ancestral Puebloans, the decline of Mesopotamian kingdoms, all coincided with environmental stress. The heavens that once promised order revealed their indifference, and the monuments became ruins. The terror was not only that the sky could signal doom, but that it would do so despite every sacrifice and alignment. From these global fears, we turn now to the deserts of North America, where the ancestral Puebloans left marks of cosmic terror etched into stone. At Chaco Canyon, spirals carved beside a narrow shaft of sunlight seem to record the great cycles of the sun and moon. They may also preserve memories of catastrophe, warning future generations that the sky's rhythms, though beautiful, could also herald collapse. The stories of omens were never just tales for children or warnings whispered in the dark. They carried the weight of survival. When the sky darkened at noon, when a comet unfurled across the heavens, when a new star blazed into being, whole societies shifted their behavior. Wars were delayed or hastened. Kings trembled on their thrones. Farmers hesitated to plant. The entire fabric of daily life could be shaken by what appeared above. The heavens were more than distant lights. They were instruments of fate. Ancient rulers understood this power and used it. In Babylon, when an eclipse threatened the king, priests might enthrone a temporary substitute, dressing a commoner in royal robes and declaring him king for a day. When the eclipse passed, the substitute was executed, and the true ruler returned, safe from the curse. This grim ritual shows how literally omens were taken, and how far societies went to protect themselves from celestial wrath. In China, emperors employed whole schools of astronomers to track the heavens, for a failure to predict an eclipse was seen as proof that the mandate of heaven had been lost. Accuracy was not an academic matter, but the key to political survival. In the Americas, fear of omens often merged with ritual blood. The Maya, who tracked cycles with unmatched precision, still responded to eclipses with sacrifice. They believed the sun was under attack. and only human offerings could persuade the gods to restore light. In their carvings, kings pierce their tongues with obsidian blades, queens draw blood from their flesh, captives are slain, all to ensure that cosmic order returns. For them, omens were not abstract. They demanded payment in pain and death. Even in cultures where myth has faded, the echoes of fear remain. Medieval chronicles are filled with accounts of comets bringing plague, famine, or the fall of rulers. When Halley's Comet appeared in the sky before the Norman conquest of England, it was remembered as a herald of upheaval. When it returned centuries later, it was feared as a sign of disaster once again. The repetition of fear itself became a cycle, as dependable as the comet's orbit. Humanity could not look at a strange light in the sky without imagining that catastrophe followed. The terror of omens lies in their unpredictability. The solstice sunrise can be counted on, the rising of Sirius can be anticipated, the phases of the moon repeat faithfully, but eclipses strike suddenly if one lacks the tools to predict them, and comets appear without warning. A supernova erupts in silence, rewriting the night sky with a new and terrible Sunday. These events remind humanity that the cosmos is not entirely tame. It is not only rhythm and reassurance, but chaos and destruction. This is why alignments mattered so deeply. They were attempts to bind the unpredictable, to transform terror into pattern. Yet despite their efforts, the ancients knew that catastrophe could not be banished. Myths of world endings were found everywhere because people expected the cycle to fail eventually. The Maya foresaw worlds destroyed in flood and fire. The Norse imagined wolves devouring the sun and plunging the world into winter. The Hindus spoke of ages that end in dissolution before beginning again. These myths may be poetic, but they are also honest. They acknowledge that the heavens give life, but will also one day take it away. This fear shaped the greatest monuments. The pyramids of Egypt, the serpent pyramid of Chichen Itza, the stones of Stonehenge, the spirals carved in canyon walls, each was built to align with the sky, to prove that the world was still in balance. But each was also built in the shadow of dread. If the alignments failed, if the sun rose in the wrong place or the stars shifted unexpectedly, then the end might be near. The terrifying truth is that ancient people built their calendars not because the sky was always reliable, but because they knew it could betray them. And so we move to the deserts of North America, where the ancestral Puebloans left carvings that align with solstices and lunar standstills. Their spirals and sun daggers are not only records of cycles, but perhaps warnings. Their civilization, like so many others, rose and then declined, leaving behind stones that speak of both knowledge and fear. To stand before these carvings is to feel the same awe and unease that the ancients must have felt, knowing that the sky ruled them and that its omens could not be ignored. In the high desert of the American Southwest, mesas rise like fortresses above canyons carved by wind and water. The land is dry, the summers scorching, the winters bitter, and yet 1,000 years ago it supported one of the most remarkable cultures of ancient North America. The ancestral Puebloans, once known as the Anasazi, built great houses of stone and adobe in places like Chaco Canyon, with rooms numbering in the hundreds, walls rising several stories high, and roads stretching straight across the desert for kilometers. To survive in this arid world, they had to know the rhythms of the sky, for the rains came sparingly and the seasons were unforgiving. Their survival depended on watching the heavens as closely as any people on Earth. At Chaco Canyon, they built more than houses. They built a landscape of alignments. The great houses are oriented with striking precision to the cardinal directions, their walls and doorways set so that the sun at solstices rises or sets in line with their axes. Kivas, circular ceremonial chambers, are placed in relation to solar events. This was not accidental. It was the imprint of a people who saw the sky as their guide, who aligned their lives to its cycles. The most haunting monument of all lies not in the houses but in a cliff face above Fajada Butte. There, carved into the stone, is a spiral petroglyph. 3 great slabs of rock lean against the cliff, casting narrow shafts of light onto the spiral. On the summer solstice, a single dagger of sunlight slices directly through the center of the carving. On the winter solstice, two daggers bracket the spiral's edges. At equinoxes, the light passes to the sides. This is the sun dagger, one of the most precise and evocative solar markers in the ancient world. To create it required deep knowledge. The slabs were not moved by accident. They were positioned so that shafts of light would fall with exactness onto the spiral at key moments of the year. Each solstice and equinox could be marked with certainty. For the people of Chaco, this was no idle display. It was a calendar carved in stone, a way to know when to plant, when to harvest, when to perform ceremonies that kept the world in balance. Even more astonishing is that the sun dagger also tracks the lunar standstill cycle. Every 18.5 years, the moon reaches its maximum and minimum extremes on the horizon, rising and setting further north and south than usual. The sun dagger spiral records this long cycle as well, with shafts of light and shadow falling at precise points on the carving during these events. This means the ancestral Puebloans were not only watching the year but decades, encoding in stone a cycle that stretched beyond the memory of a single lifetime. What could have driven them to such effort? Part of the answer is survival. In a land where rainfall was uncertain and drought could destroy harvests, knowing the sky was essential. But the effort and precision suggest something more. Like the Egyptians and Maya, the Puebloans wove science and religion together. The sun dagger was not simply a tool. It was a sacred place, where the light itself became divine. To witness the shaft of sun pierce the spiral was to see the universe speaking in stone and shadow. The eerie power of the sight cannot be overstated. Standing before the spiral as the dagger of light cuts through it, one feels the same awe the ancients must have felt. It is a reminder that the cosmos is not abstract but immediate, that the sun and moon shape life on Earth in ways that cannot be ignored. For the ancestral Puebloans, the spiral was a symbol of continuity, of cycles without end, of humanity's place within the eternal turning of the heavens. Yet their civilization did not endure. Around the 13th century, Chaco Canyon was abandoned. Great houses fell silent, roads stretched into emptiness, kivas were left to the wind. Scholars debate the causes: drought, resource depletion, conflict, social upheaval. Perhaps it was all of these. But it is hard not to connect the collapse with the very cycles they so carefully observed. Tree rings tell of long droughts in that era, years when rains failed and crops withered. The spirals and alignments that once promised order may have become warnings of doom, reminders that even the most careful attention to the sky could not prevent catastrophe. The legacy of the ancestral Puebloans is both awe-inspiring and haunting. They built monuments that tracked the heavens with a precision rivaling any culture in the world. They left behind symbols of cycles larger than human life, but they also left behind silence, the ruins of a people who could not escape the power of the sky they studied so closely. From Chaco Canyon, our journey will turn eastward, across oceans and continents, to the great civilizations of Asia. There too, temples and cities were built as cosmic diagrams, aligned to solstices and equinoxes, designed to bring heaven and earth into harmony. The Khmer at Angkor, the Vedic builders of India, the emperors of China, all sought to anchor their rule in the order of the sky. Their monuments still stand, vast and intricate, testimony to the same terrifying truth that the cosmos ruled them as surely as it ruled the desert dwellers of the American Southwest. The canyon lands of the Southwest tell a story in stone and silence. Chaco Canyon was not only a settlement, but the center of a network that stretched across hundreds of kilometers. Straight roads extended from its great houses into the desert, cutting across hills and mesas with little concern for natural obstacles. Some were 9 meters wide, engineered with care, yet they did not always connect directly to other towns. Instead, many point to distant horizons, as if designed to link the people not merely to one another but to the sky itself. The orientation of these roads, and the placement of buildings within Chaco, reveal a striking attention to celestial order. The great house of Pueblo Bonito, with over 600 rooms arranged in a D shape, was laid out so that its walls aligned with the cardinal directions. Windows and doorways frame the rising and setting sun at solstices, turning architecture into a theater for celestial events. Other great houses share similar alignments, suggesting a community-wide effort to embed the cosmos into daily life. Archaeologists have found evidence that ceremonies were timed to these alignments. Fire pits, kivas, and plazas all suggest that crowds gathered to watch the sun rise or set along particular lines. At the right moment, the landscape and the architecture converged with the sky, transforming ordinary light into sacred revelation. These moments would have confirmed for the people that their lives were in harmony with the cosmos, that their rituals preserved the balance of the world. But the scale of construction raises a troubling question. Why would a people living in such a harsh environment devote so much labor to aligning roads and buildings with celestial events? Part of the answer lies in the role of astronomy as social glue. In a society spread thin across deserts and mesas, a shared calendar was essential. By fixing time to the sky, leaders could synchronize ceremonies, migrations, and agricultural cycles. To gather at Chaco was not only to reaffirm community, but to reaffirm that the cosmos itself sanctioned their way of life. There may have been another, darker motive. The very precision of the sun dagger and the alignments of the great houses suggest an obsession with cycles, not only of the sun but of the moon. The lunar standstill, with its 18-year span, was encoded into stone. Why track a cycle so long, unless it carried consequences too important to ignore? Some researchers argue that the lunar cycle was tied to weather patterns, perhaps affecting rainfall. If droughts were anticipated from lunar behavior, then watching the moon was not a curiosity but a matter of survival. The alignments may have been warnings as much as celebrations. Tree ring data tells us that the 12th and 13th centuries brought devastating droughts to the southwest. Crops failed, rivers dried, and people abandoned their homes. In this context, the spirals and alignments of Chaco Canyon take on a chilling meaning. They may not have been built only to celebrate cycles, but to remind the people of catastrophe, to mark in stone the turning of skies that could bring death. The sun dagger, cutting through its spiral at solstice, may have been both promise and warning. The collapse of Chacoan society underscores the fragility of human alignment with the cosmos. Despite their precision, despite their devotion, the people of Chaco could not prevent the rains from failing. Their roads fell silent, their houses empty, their ceremonies abandoned. What remains are ruins that still speak, their alignments intact, their spirals catching the same shafts of light as they did 1,000 years ago. The stones remember what the people could not endure. Standing today in the canyon, surrounded by silence and wind, one feels the weight of that memory. The spiral at Fajada Butte still receives the dagger of light. The great houses still face the solstices. The roads still point to horizons. But the people are gone, their voices lost, their ceremonies ended. What survives is the record of their fear and their faith, etched into architecture that still obeys the sky. The ancestral Puebloans remind us that alignment with the heavens is not a guarantee of safety. It is an act of devotion, a hope for harmony, a desperate attempt to impose order on forces beyond control. Their spirals and roads are not only relics but warnings. They tell us that civilizations can rise in brilliance, can master cycles with precision, and yet can still collapse when the skies turn against them. As the desert wind moves through the ruins of Chaco, we look eastward once more. Across the oceans, in the dense jungles of Cambodia, the Khmer Empire built Angkor Wat, a temple complex so vast it can be seen from orbit. Its towers and causeways are aligned to solstices and equinoxes, its very layout a map of the cosmos. In India, Vedic traditions shaped temples into astronomical instruments, embedding cycles of sun and moon into sacred geometry. In China, emperors aligned their forbidden city to the pole star, anchoring their rule in the eternal order of heaven. These civilizations too sought to bind earth to sky, carving their faith into stone that still endures. The silence of Chaco Canyon hides a story that is still being pieced together, not only through the ruins themselves, but through the landscape that surrounds them. When archaeologists and astronomers study the orientations of these great houses, roads, and petroglyphs, they find an unbroken theme. The sky was central. The ancestral Puebloans did not merely build for shelter, they built as if the universe itself were woven into every wall and line. At Pueblo Bonito, Windows and doorways are arranged so that the sun at solstices frames them. Other great houses across the canyon echo the same pattern, as though the entire settlement was one vast calendar. Even the roads, those impossibly straight lines cutting across mesas and valleys, may have pointed toward the rising and setting of celestial bodies. These roads seem to defy practicality. Some run into cliffs, others end abruptly at remote viewpoints. To modern eyes, they are puzzling, but to those who walked them centuries ago, they may have been processional paths guiding pilgrims toward the horizon, where sun and moon marked the passage of sacred time. The sun dagger at Fajada Butte remains the most haunting symbol of this cosmic devotion. A spiral carved into stone, pierced by shafts of light at solstices and lunar extremes, it is at once art, calendar, and warning. To stand there on the longest day, watching a single blade of sunlight strike the center of the spiral, is to feel the presence of a mind that sought to bind eternity into a moment. The people who made it were not passive watchers of the sky. They engaged with it, shaped their lives around it, and cut its rhythms into stone so that no one could forget. And yet, despite this brilliance, Chaco fell. By the late 13th century, the great houses were abandoned. Droughts struck with ferocity. Crops failed. Famine and conflict spread. The very cycles that the sun dagger recorded seemed to turn against them. For a people who had tied their fate so tightly to the sky, this betrayal must have been devastating. Their monuments became silent, reminders that the heavens, however carefully tracked, remain indifferent to human need. This collapse resonates with eerie familiarity. Again and again, civilizations have turned to the heavens for guidance, building temples and calendars to secure their future, only to discover that precision cannot guarantee survival. The ancestral Puebloans joined the long line of cultures who understood the sky better than we give them credit for, but who still fell when the cycles of nature shifted beyond endurance. Their spirals and roads endure, but their voices are gone, carried away by the desert wind. When we look at their legacy today, we see not only ingenuity but warning. The spirals remind us that cycles larger than human life govern our fate. The great houses remind us that even vast communal effort cannot shield us when those cycles turn. The roads remind us that humanity has always sought to connect heaven and earth, even when the path leads into silence. From the desert mesas of New Mexico, our path now carries us across oceans and continents to the east, where civilizations even larger and more enduring than Chaco bound their cities to the cosmos. In the jungles of Cambodia, Angkor Wat rises as a mountain of stone, aligned to solstices and equinoxes. In India, Vedic traditions shaped temples into diagrams of the sky, embedding geometry with both spiritual and astronomical meaning. In China, emperors built the Forbidden City as a mirror of heaven itself, its axis aligned with the pole star, its order a declaration that the cosmos had chosen them to rule. The same truth emerges again and again, whether in the deserts of the southwest, the jungles of Cambodia, or the palaces of Beijing. Humanity has always sought to secure its survival by aligning with the heavens. The ancestral Puebloans carved spirals into canyon walls. The Khmer carved towers into the jungle sky. The Chinese carved an empire into the axis of the world. In each case, the motive was the same: to place humanity inside cosmic order, to shield against chaos, to live in harmony with powers that could never be fully controlled. Across the jungles of Southeast Asia, the plains of India, and the palaces of China, a different but familiar language of stone emerged. These civilizations, separated by oceans and mountains from the peoples of Egypt, Mesoamerica, and the American Southwest, nevertheless came to the same conclusion. The heavens were not only guides for survival, but foundations of order itself. To live without harmony with the cosmos was to invite chaos. To align a temple, a city, or an empire with the sky was to declare that human life was woven into eternal cycles. This belief produced monuments so vast and enduring that they remain among the wonders of the world. In Cambodia, Angkor Wat rises from the jungle like a stone lotus blooming upon the earth. Built in the 12th century by the Khmer Empire, it is the largest religious monument on the planet, an entire city of towers, causeways, and courtyards designed with astonishing symmetry. At first sight, it appears as a magnificent temple complex dedicated to Hindu gods, but hidden within its layout is a deeper truth. The entire structure is a cosmic diagram. Its towers rise like the peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical mountain at the center of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. Its moats represent the cosmic oceans, its walls enclose levels of heaven. Angkor Wat is not simply a temple. It is the universe in miniature, carved into stone. What makes it all the more striking is how it is aligned. The central axis of Angkor Wat points directly west, toward the setting sun. This is unusual for Hindu temples, which are generally aligned east toward the sunrise, and has led scholars to suggest that Angkor Wat may also have been intended as a funerary temple. But the alignment has astronomical consequences. On the equinox, the sun rises directly over the central tower, a breathtaking moment when the heavens crown the temple in light. Visitors today still gather to watch the equinox sunrise, just as ancient worshippers once did. In that instant, myth becomes reality. The temple is revealed as the axis of the cosmos, the place where heaven and earth meet. The bas-reliefs of Angkor Wat reinforce this cosmic role. Carved into its walls are stories of gods and battles, but also subtle astronomical references. Scholars who have studied the reliefs argue that they encode calendrical cycles, solar and lunar rhythms, and even the great cycle of precession. The builders may have embedded in stone the recognition that the sky itself shifts over millennia, that even the heavens have their long turning. If so, then Angkor Wat is not only a temple of devotion but a monument to astronomical awareness, a warning that cosmic order must constantly be renewed. Further west in India, the traditions of Vedic astronomy shaped sacred architecture in ways just as profound. The Vedic texts, written thousands of years ago, already reveal a fascination with cycles of the sun, moon, and planets. Time was divided into yugas, vast ages that began and ended with cosmic upheaval. Temples were designed not only as houses of gods, but as diagrams of the universe, their proportions reflecting numerical relationships tied to celestial rhythms. The very act of building a temple was an act of aligning with the cosmos, anchoring human ritual in cosmic geometry. One striking example is the observatory built centuries later at Jaipur, known as Jantar Mantar. Though created in the 18th century, it drew on older traditions of using architecture as an astronomical tool. Massive stone instruments track the positions of the sun, moon, and stars with remarkable precision. Giant sundials measure time to within minutes. Walls and stairways act as sightlines to celestial bodies. These instruments continue the Vedic impulse to fuse architecture and astronomy, to make buildings into machines of cosmic observation. While Jantar Mantar came long after the peak of Vedic culture, it shows the continuity of an ancient worldview, that human order must mirror celestial order, that stone must serve as an anchor for the sky. In China, the relationship between heaven and earth was expressed with even greater political force. The emperors ruled under the mandate of heaven, a divine authority that was confirmed or withdrawn by celestial signs. To build a city, a palace, or an empire required alignment with the cosmos. Nowhere is this more clear than in the Forbidden City of Beijing, constructed in the 15th century. Its entire layout is based on a north-south axis, oriented to the pole star. For the Chinese, the pole star was the pivot of the heavens, the unmoving center around which all other stars revolved. By aligning their capital with this star, the emperors declared themselves the earthly counterparts of cosmic order, the fixed center of the human world. Every detail of the Forbidden City reinforces this cosmic symbolism. The central axis runs for kilometers through gates, halls, and courtyards, drawing the eye always northward toward the pole. The number of rooms, the arrangement of buildings, the sequence of courtyards all are based on numerology and cosmology. The palace is not merely a residence, but a statement. The emperor rules because the heavens decree it. If an eclipse occurred unexpectedly, if a comet blazed in the sky, it was taken as a sign that the mandate of heaven was faltering. The emperor's legitimacy was bound not only to political power, but to celestial harmony. What unites Angkor Wat, Vedic temples, and the Forbidden City is the recognition that cosmic geometry was more than architecture, it was a means of control. By aligning with the heavens, rulers declared that their authority was sanctioned by forces beyond human dispute. To walk through Angkor Wat was to walk through the cosmos itself, sanctified by the equinox Sunday. To worship in a Vedic temple was to participate in the turning of celestial cycles. To stand before the Forbidden City was to see heaven reflected in stone, the emperor at its axis. In each case, architecture served not merely to inspire, but to command, binding society together under the claim that order on earth was guaranteed by order in the heavens. Yet hidden beneath this beauty and grandeur lies fear. Why devote such immense resources to aligning buildings with the sky unless disorder was a constant threat? Why carve procession into bas-reliefs unless change was expected and dreaded? Why declare that emperors ruled under heaven unless heaven could also withdraw its favor? The monuments of the East, like those of Egypt and the Americas, reveal a deep anxiety. The heavens promised order, but they also threatened chaos. To live without alignment was to risk collapse. To build without cosmic geometry was to invite disaster. This truth ties east to west, jungle to desert, palace to pyramid. Everywhere, humans have sought to secure themselves against the indifference of the cosmos by anchoring their lives to its cycles. They have raised towers, carved spirals, built circles, and aligned cities, all in the hope that harmony with the sky would ensure survival. Yet the record of history shows that survival was never guaranteed. Angkor was abandoned, Vedic kingdoms fell, dynasties in China rose and collapsed. The geometry endured, but the societies it sustained did not. As we leave the great monuments of the East, we confront the darker side of cosmic alignment. For all the brilliance of these civilizations, their devotion to the heavens could not protect them from catastrophe. Droughts, wars, and plagues came regardless. Yet the myths of cosmic disaster that haunted them may contain memories of something even greater. Events when the heavens themselves struck the earth with fire and flood. To explore this possibility, we turn next to the theory of ancient catastrophe, to the Younger Dryas and Göbekli Tepe, to the idea that the monuments we inherit are not only calendars but warnings. The monuments of the ancient world stand as calendars, temples, and diagrams of cosmic order, but some may also hold darker messages. Behind the careful alignments to solstices and equinoxes, behind the serene geometry of pyramids and temples, there lingers the possibility that these works were built not only to honor the heavens, but to warn of catastrophe descending from them. The most unsettling theory of all suggests that at the end of the last ice age, around 12,800 years ago, the Earth was struck by fragments of a comet or asteroid, an event that triggered sudden cooling, floods, and firestorms, the period we call the Younger Dryas. If this is true, then ancient monuments like those at Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey may preserve not myths alone, but memories of a disaster that reshaped the world. The Younger Dryas remains one of the greatest mysteries in climate history. The Earth had been warming for millennia, ice sheets retreating, seas rising. Then, abruptly, temperatures plunged again, particularly in the northern hemisphere. Glaciers advanced, ecosystems collapsed, and megafauna like mammoths and saber-toothed cats declined toward extinction. This sudden reversal lasted for more than 1,000 years before warming resumed. The cause has been debated for decades. Some scientists argue that the disruption of ocean currents due to melting ice triggered the cooling. Others point to volcanic activity. But in recent years, evidence has been presented that fragments of a comet or asteroid may have struck the planet, scattering debris, igniting wildfires, and sending shockwaves of destruction. The idea is controversial, for direct evidence is difficult to obtain after so many millennia. Yet layers of sediment from this period show spikes of microscopic diamonds, magnetic spherules, and other materials that can form under high-energy impacts. Charcoal layers suggest immense fires sweeping across continents. The coincidence in timing is unsettling. Just as human societies in the Americas and elsewhere were beginning to flourish, the world grew harsher, forcing adaptation, migration, or collapse. If a cosmic impact triggered the Younger Dryas, then it left scars not only in geology, but in human memory. This is where Göbekli Tepe enters the story. Rising from the hills of southeastern Turkey, this site is older than Stonehenge or the pyramids by thousands of years. Built around 11,600 years ago, it consists of massive stone circles with T-shaped pillars carved with animals, symbols, and abstract figures. It was not a village, for no houses have been found. It appears instead to have been a ceremonial center, perhaps the first monumental architecture ever built by humans. Its very existence has forced historians to reconsider the origins of civilization, for it suggests that ritual and astronomy preceded farming rather than following it. Among the carvings at Göbekli Tepe is one that has drawn particular attention. On a pillar, sometimes called the vulture stone, animals and symbols are arranged in a way that some researchers interpret as an astronomical message. They suggest that the figures represent constellations and that the arrangement encodes the date of the Younger Dryas impact. If this interpretation is correct, then the builders of Göbekli Tepe were recording not myth but memory, a catastrophe so vast it reshaped their world. The site itself, intentionally buried by its builders thousands of years later, may have been preserved as a time capsule, a warning to future generations of what the sky can unleash. Mainstream archaeology remains skeptical of such interpretations. Symbols are difficult to decode, and there is no consensus that the carvings represent constellations. Yet even without this reading, the site demonstrates that astronomy was central to its builders. The pillars are aligned with the cardinal directions, and the enclosure orientations may track the rising of bright stars such as Sirius. This alone suggests that the people of Göbekli Tepe were already watching the sky with intense care, long before agriculture, cities, or writing emerged. If they were motivated by memories of disaster, then their devotion to the heavens is even more understandable. What makes the theory haunting is how it resonates with myths preserved across cultures. Stories of floods, of fire from the sky, of gods hurling stones upon the earth, these are found from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, from India to the Americas. The Sumerians told of a flood that wiped out humanity. The Bible preserves the tale of Noah. Native American traditions speak of fire serpents that scorched the land. These myths may be cultural echoes of real events, passed down and reshaped over generations until they became the stories we know today. If a comet shattered in the atmosphere and rained destruction, it would have been remembered not as geology, but as divine wrath. To consider this possibility is unsettling because it bridges myth and science. If the Younger Dryas impact theory is correct, then ancient myths are not mere imagination but coded history. Monuments like Göbekli Tepe may not only celebrate the heavens, but also serve as warning markers, reminders that the sky is capable of betrayal. Humanity, just emerging from the hardships of the Ice Age, may have built its first temples not to praise the gods in general, but to guard against the terror of cosmic catastrophe. The debate continues fiercely. Many scientists reject the impact hypothesis, pointing to alternative explanations. The evidence is complex, the data contested. But whether or not a comet struck, the fact remains that ancient people lived through abrupt climate change, catastrophic floods, and the disappearance of animals they had hunted for millennia. They witnessed upheaval on a scale that would have seemed apocalyptic. It is no wonder they turned to the sky for answers, or that their descendants carried stories of destruction from generation to generation. The terrifying truth is that both possibilities remain. Perhaps the Younger Dryas was caused by earthly forces alone. Perhaps it was triggered by fire from the heavens. In either case, the impact on human culture was immense. It gave birth to stories of apocalypse. It inspired alignments that sought to track cosmic cycles, and it may have motivated the very first monumental architecture. The lesson is the same. The sky is not only beautiful, but dangerous. Not only order, but chaos. Not only life, but death. As we leave Göbekli Tepe and the mystery of the Younger Dryas, we return to the broader question. Were the alignments and myths of ancient civilizations independent inventions, or do they point to a shared memory, a global fear passed down through time? The ruins suggest that humanity, separated by oceans and millennia, responded to the heavens in remarkably similar ways. The cycle of fear and devotion was not local but universal. And so our journey turns to this final riddle: whether the monuments are independent echoes of human instinct, or whether they preserve fragments of hidden knowledge shared across the ancient world. The ruins of the ancient world whisper in many tongues, yet their message is strangely unified. From Egypt to Mesoamerica, from the deserts of the southwest to the jungles of Cambodia, from the plains of India to the palaces of China, civilizations separated by vast distances all carved the sky into stone. They tracked solstices and equinoxes, lunar cycles and planetary motions, and they embedded these patterns into their greatest monuments. The eerie question is whether this represents independent invention born of necessity, or whether it reflects something deeper: shared memory, hidden knowledge, or perhaps a universal fear. The simplest explanation is survival. Every culture depended on the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars. Agriculture required knowing when rains would come, when floods would rise, when heat or frost would strike. Nomadic peoples needed to navigate across deserts and oceans. To ignore the heavens was to risk death. Thus, it is no surprise that many civilizations built calendars and aligned their monuments with the sky. Practical need alone could explain the similarity. And yet, there is something unsettling about the precision, the scale, and the persistence of these alignments. It is one thing to mark the solstice with a wooden post or a simple shrine. It is another to raise pyramids aligned to Orion's belt, to carve a spiral that marks not only the year but the 18-year lunar standstill cycle, to build temples encoding precession, the slow wobble of the Earth's axis that shifts the stars over millennia. Precession is particularly telling, for it unfolds over 26,000 years, far longer than the lifespan of a single culture. Yet hints of awareness of precession appear in myths and monuments worldwide. The Greeks spoke of the Great Year, a cycle in which the heavens returned to their original positions. The Maya embedded long cycles into their calendar system, stretching across thousands of years. The builders of Angkor Wat may have recorded precessional shifts in their bas-reliefs. These are not the concerns of farmers watching for the next harvest. They are the concerns of people thinking on cosmic scales, people who expected that the heavens could change in terrifying ways. Why would such distant cultures all care about such long cycles? One possibility is that precession was observed by keen astronomers who passed their knowledge down carefully through generations, each culture rediscovering the cycle through meticulous observation. Another possibility is that catastrophic events, whether floods, droughts, or even celestial impacts, seared the memory of cosmic change into the human mind. If a comet struck during a particular alignment, or if climate collapse coincided with a celestial shift, then the lesson would have been clear: the cycles of the sky can bring disaster. Such lessons would be passed down in story, ritual, and monument, echoing across time and geography. This may explain why myths of apocalypse are so universal. Nearly every culture has stories of worlds destroyed and remade. The Maya spoke of ages ending in fire and flood. The Norse envisioned wolves devouring the sun and plunging the world into winter. The Hindus described cycles of creation and destruction called kalpas, in which the universe itself dissolves before being born again. The Mesopotamians recorded a flood that wiped out humanity. These myths may not be independent invention but shared memory of real disasters, amplified into cosmic tales. The monuments then become more than calendars, they become warnings. A pyramid aligned to Orion may not only celebrate the rising of a god, but also remind the people that the stars once shifted, that the sky once betrayed them. A spiral marking lunar standstills may also whisper of droughts that struck when the moon reached its extremes. A temple aligned to the equinox may encode the memory that balance can be lost, that darkness can swallow the light. The geometry is not only science, but a talisman against chaos. There is also the question of transmission. Could ancient peoples, separated by continents, have shared knowledge across oceans? Mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, for there is little evidence of direct contact between, say, Egypt and Mesoamerica. Yet the similarities in architectural alignments, in myths of floods and fire, in awareness of long cycles, continue to provoke speculation. Even if no direct contact occurred, it is possible that the shared experiences of survival under the same sky produced the same responses. In this sense, the knowledge is not hidden but universal, born of the same fear that no society could escape. The terrifying truth is that the sky does not care whether civilizations flourish or fall. Its cycles turn regardless. The solstices return, the procession shifts, the comets blaze, the eclipses strike. Human beings, fragile and fearful, sought to read these cycles in order to prepare. Sometimes they succeeded, creating calendars of breathtaking accuracy. Sometimes they failed, collapsing under droughts or floods they could not predict. The monuments that remain are not triumphs of confidence alone, they are also monuments of fear, reminders that the sky has ended worlds before and may end them again. As we move toward the final chapter, we see the pattern clearly. The pyramids, the stone circles, the spirals, the temples, the palaces, all are variations on the same theme. Humanity cannot escape the heavens. The alignments are not coincidences, not superstitions, not merely myths. They are records of awe and terror, of survival and collapse, of hope and fear. The ancients saw in the stars not only gods, but omens, not only order, but warning, and they left us a message carved in stone, that the cycles continue, that we are still bound to them, that the sky will speak again. The journey across the ruins of the world leads us to a single realization. The sky was not only a canvas of myth, but a clock of survival, a source of terror, and a mirror of civilization itself. From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Cambodia, from the canyons of the American Southwest to the palaces of China, ancient people carved their fear and their hope into stone. They aligned temples, pyramids, and circles not as idle curiosities, but as instruments of time, as bridges between heaven and earth, as warnings to those who would come after. The terrifying truth is not that they worshipped stars as gods. It is that they understood, far more clearly than we often admit, that humanity is bound to cycles larger than itself, cycles that will continue long after our own civilizations have crumbled. The pyramids of Giza, aligned with uncanny precision to Orion's belt, remind us that the Egyptians saw their pharaohs as part of a cosmic order. Death was not an end, but a return to the stars, and the geometry of the pyramids was a guarantee of passage. The Maya, with their serpent shadow pyramid at Chichen Itza and their Venus-based calendars, show us how the cycles of planets and eclipses were tied to ritual blood, sacrifice, and cosmic renewal. Stonehenge, with its solstice and lunar alignments, proves that even in the misty isles of Britain, the sun and moon dictated the rhythms of life and death. Chaco Canyon's spirals and sun daggers tell us that even in the arid deserts of North America, people sought to carve decades-long cycles into stone, anchoring their survival in light and shadow. In Asia, Angkor Wat stands as the largest religious monument on Earth. Its towers align to equinoxes, its bas-reliefs encoding celestial cycles. The Vedic temples of India and the observatories of Jaipur show how cosmic geometry became sacred law. The Forbidden City, aligned to the pole star, demonstrates how emperors grounded their rule in the unshakable pivot of heaven. Each of these monuments, vast in scale and enduring in time, testifies that the ancients were not naive. They were attuned to a universe that could nurture but also destroy. The myths that grew from these alignments all speak of catastrophe, floods that wiped out humanity, fires that rained from the sky, wolves devouring the Sunday ages, ending in dissolution. Whether or not these myths preserve memories of real cosmic disasters, they reveal how fragile civilizations felt in the face of celestial disorder. The Younger Dryas, whether caused by ocean currents or fragments of a comet, seared into humanity the memory of sudden change. Göbekli Tepe may even preserve that memory in stone, its carvings hinting at constellations and disaster. If so, then the first great temple of humanity was not only a celebration of the cosmos, but a warning about it. We like to imagine that we are different, that modern science has freed us from the fears of the ancients. We can predict eclipses to the second, track comets with telescopes, and send spacecraft to the outer planets. Yet we are still bound to the same cycles. The tilt of the Earth still governs our seasons. Precession still shifts the stars slowly over millennia. Solar cycles still affect our climate. Comets and asteroids still cross our orbit, and one day one may strike again. The ancients were not wrong to fear the sky. They were simply honest about their vulnerability. What is most unsettling is how well they remembered. They did not write in paper alone, which burns and crumbles. They wrote in stone, in alignments so massive that they could not be ignored. They ensured that future generations would see the same solstice sun rising over the same horizon, the same shadow crossing the same carving, the same star rising over the same tower. Their message was not only that they existed, but that they knew. They knew that the cycles of the heavens outlast kings and empires. They knew that disaster was not only possible, but inevitable. They knew that humanity must remember or perish unprepared. The universe, written in stone, tells us that we are still part of this story. We walk among ruins, marvel at alignments, speculate about myths, but the cycles continue. The solstice sun still rises, the precession still turns, the comets still return. The terrifying truth is not that the ancients saw gods in the stars, it is that they saw us. They saw future generations bound by the same rhythms, facing the same threats, looking to the same heavens for meaning and warning. We inherit their fear and their knowledge. The pyramids still point to Orion. The serpent still slithers down the stairs of Chichen Itza. The sun still pierces the spiral at Fahad Butte. The equinox sun still crowns Angkor Wat. The pole star still anchors the Forbidden City. Their messages are still being delivered, as relentless as the turning of the earth. They remind us that civilizations rise and fall, but the sky remains, indifferent and eternal. And so we stand where they once stood, watching the horizon, waiting for the light to return, hoping that the cycles will favor us. The monuments whisper across millennia, telling us what the ancients already knew, that we are not masters of the heavens but subjects of their order, that our survival depends on reading their signs, that the sky will one day speak again, and when it does, the only question will be whether we listen to the stones that tried to warn us.